Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to another episode of the NCDWI Guy podcast. Today, we have a very special guest on the program, Jonathan Dichter, who is from DUI Heroes, managing partner of DUI Heroes, been an attorney that practices in the DUI Arena for over 15 years, is the author of innovative DUI Trial Tools, the most recent 4th edition, which is a national strategy guide for DUI lawyers all over the country. He's also written a DUI survival guide for his clients to help walk them through the process, has been very involved and engaged with the National College of DUI Defense, frequently teaches on DUI topics with all kinds of different associations, number of seminars with NACDL. And we are very excited to have Jonathan on the program today. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan.
Wow, you make me sound a lot more impressive than I think I might be, James. But no, thank you for having me.
No, definitely undersell. Very impressive coursework and all kinds of different teaching aspects, and certainly with the pretty hefty text that is the DUI Trial Tools, which again, lawyers all over the country look at.
I appreciate it. I'll tell you though, that the one thing that isn't written anywhere in there that only lawyers will appreciate, and this isn't a story I really tell people, but you'll get it, where I felt like finally, okay, maybe I know something that people might be interested in learning from me. I was sitting in my office. I had developed a storytelling CLE that I was going to teach for the Washington Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And my legal secretary came back in and she said, there's a lawyer from Colorado on the line who wants to talk to you about your CLE and maybe about cross-examination or something like that. I said, I don't know anybody from Colorado, but sure, I'll pick up the phone. I picked the phone. It was Larry Posner. And Larry was about to give a talk to the National College for DUI Defense on cross-examination for DUI. And he said, Jonathan, I don't do DUIs. I know how to cross-examine, but cross-examining in DUIs is a really unique sort of thing. And if you saw that presentation at the National College in October, about, I'm going to say 30 to 40% of his PowerPoint slides were direct lifts out of my book, because I just sent him the information I use on cross-examination, and he just used it. And that's great. I loved it. I was like, holy cow, it's Larry Posner's using my stuff. So,
well, that's the kind of thing that I feel like those kind of trial notebooks are so helpful with. There's no point in reinventing the wheel every single time. When you've got the right cross-examination questions, the right framework for closing, reinventing the wheel is just not the right call in every single case.
Yeah, it's about fine-tuning as you go. One of my associates is prepping what's going to be her first chair DUI jury trial right now. And as I'm sort of guiding her through that process, I told her, the way you're thinking about this is backwards. The way you should be thinking about this is the first thing I do is I draft the opening line of my closing argument. Then I figure out what I need the state to forget to prove, and I work backwards instead of forwards. And she turned everything on its head and started doing it that way. And so it's just about kind of thinking about it. Yeah, always. So, and I find there's about 7 or 8 different ideas, and they're all variations on a theme. And then you just tweak it a little and you add new things here and there where they work, try them out and see what sticks.
Well, Jonathan, tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you into the DUI Arena. Was that something that you kind of wanted to do, criminal law out of law school? What was the reason for kind of walking down that road?
My whole journey to arrive here was a series of unfortunate accidents. I was raised by a doctor and a nurse, and I wanted to be an emergency room physician. And I started in medical school. I did through a 6-year medical program. And about a year and a half into that program, I realized that the more advanced sciences did not click with my brain. And I needed to switch gears. And I went home and I told my mom and dad, hey, I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. And they said, okay, well, what do you think you're going to do? And I said, well, in my spare time, I've been doing stand-up. I think I might want to act. And my mom fell off the couch.
I'm sure there was a lot of applause on that, right?
Yeah, my mom literally fell off the couch at that point. And so when she came to, I said, or maybe law school. And they said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
That was a good way to set it up. There was that if you set the bar low and then move into that, that's a good way to kind of tell the medical family that I'm going to be doing something else. Yeah. That was a good way of easing the blow.
I say all the time, the only thing people hate more than a defense lawyer is a stand-up comic, and I've been both. So it's. But I changed my direction. I went to law school. I got a political science degree from University of Akron in Ohio. Moved out to Seattle to go to law school, and when I got here, I figured, I've been doing the stand-up thing. I'll do entertainment law. And that's what all right. And then I took contracts. And on the second day of contracts, I said, crap, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. So what else am I going to do?
Were you doing stand-up during that time while you were in law school?
No, not so much. I mean, I had an open invitation to a couple of clubs nearby because I knew some of the people who owned it, because I'd been doing kind of the stand-up circuit, and I'd done a little bit of voice work and things like that. And I'd done some radio work, but no,
it seems like that would really kind of be a helpful background in terms of law school, especially in terms of the courtroom and of things, just being comfortable up in front of people, learning how to break the ice.
Yeah, it really is. And that's partially why contracts did not appeal to me, because contracts are dead documents and not living people.
Right.
I spent that summer interning for my dad's attorney. And at that point, my mom and dad were living in rural Oklahoma. And this was a little tiny law firm that did everything: oil and gas, lease, family law, personal injury, you name it. And they had a criminal appeal that came of a municipal ordinance violation. It was an appeal of a trespassing case. And they said, well, Jonathan, you just took criminal law. Why don't you do this? I said, all right, cool. The first year law student, just finished my first year, had my, I'm excited to be a law student shirt on and everything. And I went out to go investigate this case, right? And I drove out to the little town in Oklahoma where this took place. And I won't name the town just in case there are people from the town that are offended. But I can tell you that driving into this town, right, I had to go into the town to kind of get some of the records and things. Driving in town, there were two signs at the city limits. One said, and these were both machine-produced, professionally designed signs that were at the town city limits. And I'm going to remind you that this was the summer of the year 2000. The first sign was, welcome to blank Oklahoma, this is our town, blah, 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 blah. The second sign, in very, very impolite language, warned minorities not to be on the streets after dark.
Dang, that is crazy.
And I decided at that moment, I don't care what my client did or didn't do. This town is not going to win.
Right.
Because I'm not okay with that, right? And I did some research and found a really fun loophole in the ordinances. And sure enough, I wrote up a brief and we got the thing dismissed. And it felt amazing. And so I came back to law school and I started studying criminal law. And I found a real knack for it. And much like everybody else in their second year of law school, I applied for my limited license to be an intern, what we call a Rule 9 intern here, limited license practice. And like literally everybody else in Seattle, I applied to be a prosecutorial intern with the King County Prosecutor's Office. And like everybody else, I did not get that job. And I stood, the story I like to tell is I stood in the lobby of the King County Courthouse in Seattle, and I made a pact with God at that point that if the prosecutor's office didn't want me, I'd spend the rest of my career making them sorry for that decision. It's a great story, and I wish it were true, but it's not. What actually happened was I said, crap, I need a job, and I kept looking, and eventually I got picked up by a small public defense firm that did municipal court public defense, license suspensions, reckless drivings, assaults, shoplifting, DUI. And I did that until I got my bar card. And at that point, I was the public defender for a small city north of Seattle. Basically, the firm I worked for held that contract. They were a subcontractor. And that was my territory. And I worked there for a couple of years. And then a private attorney who had just started up a firm came in and didn't know where to stand in that courthouse and asked me for help, and I helped her out. And she ended up hiring me to be her associate. And I worked there for about 2.5 years. And then in the summer of 2009, I got an email laying me off, like everybody else in the summer of 2009.
Right. Yeah.
And I found myself in a really weird position because I had literally just put a nursery together for my daughter who was on the way. I had about $0 in my bank account because I was waiting on a baby. And now I had no job. I called every attorney I knew and said, who wants me? And they all said, we would love to have you, but you're too good at this point and we can't afford you. So then I said, I got to open a firm. I went to every bank in town and they all said, as soon as you've been in business 2 years, we'll lend you whatever you want.
That's always the favorite answer.
So I got a small business loan from the First National Bank of my grandma. And I opened my firm, which was originally Dictor Law Office, on August 1st, 2009. And we already had a client. I had one client at that point. And it was a DUI case. And at that point, I'd been a member of the National College. I'd been learning about DUIs. DUI was one of the focus areas of that other firm. And so it became my new focus area. And over the course of the first 3 years, our DUI volumes increased to the point where on the third year in business, we did not get hired on any cases other than DUIs in that entire year. And so I said, okay, well, I'm wasting marketing dollars marketing for non-DUI cases because I'm not getting them. So I'm going to push all in on DUI. And I did. My firm became exclusively DUI. And we went through a variety of different evolutions of our firm and our firm's image. About 3.5 years ago, I brought on my first associate. About 6 months ago, actually almost 8 months ago now, I brought on my second associate and just recently promoted the first associate to senior associate. And that's our team. We have a legal assistant as well. And then January 1st of this year, essentially, we pulled the trigger on something I've been working on behind the scenes for quite a while, which was a complete renaming and rebranding of my firm. My firm is, we're still, Dictor Law Office is still the business name, but we've now a registered trade name doing business as. We are now DUIHeroes.com. And DUI Heroes as well, either one, .com or without the .com. And that change, I'll tell you from an aside, on a business perspective, making that change the first month that we invested our marketing into that, we saw a revenue bump of about 200%.
That's incredible. Just based on that, like, name rebranding.
Well, and it was an entire rebranding package, right? And what I mean is, like, we changed the name of the firm. We had the website redesigned by our website guys. We had a new firm branding video produced. We had a variety of different new, we had new logos designed, new social media designed. I started doing my own social media organic content. Like, this was a concentrated, concerted push. And that had paid off. Doing just like exclusively DUI cases prior to that. So you started that in what did you say, about 2013? I started that this year. No, well, I started the DUI Heroes was this year, and I started doing exclusively DUI about 7 years ago. So about 2013. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's we were successful. We were a successful firm to begin with. As small firms go, our numbers and our revenue were fairly significant. We did a really nice job. Then this change is now allowing us to push to that next level. And we're doing things nobody's doing with DUIs at this point. We're doing things in terms of marketing and the way that we're handling our cases, the way that we're presenting our cases, the way we're taking care of our clients, the way we really have sort of brand cohesion, our core values. We're doing things nobody else is doing in this industry. And in fact, around the country, there's fertile ground for people that do what we do, who have a business growth mindset to look at this and push forward with it in similar ways. And about a couple weeks ago, I chatted with an attorney in Boston for about an hour, and I laid out exactly everything I've done to get to where I am. And when we were all done, he's like, I'm going to like straight up copy most of this, but I'm curious why you're telling me everything. And I said, well, number one, you're not in my market. Number two, even if you were in my market, I wouldn't care because you're not me. So you're not selling me. What I'm selling is me, my process, my firm, my people. So we're not selling the same product anyway. And number three, people helped me get started when I got started, right?
Right.
We're a very friendly bar out here. And most importantly to me is by the time my cohorts and colleagues, by the time they get as good at what I'm doing as I am, I'm going to be doing the next thing already.
Right.
And I don't mind if people are a step behind me, right? I don't mind. It's okay. I'll help you out.
Yeah, I think in terms of that focus on DUI and having done that now for such a long period of time, really everybody in the team kind of understanding this is what we do, this is how we're going to be, these are the type of clients that we're going to be serving. You know, I always kind of think about it in terms of in the medical world, a general practitioner versus a brain surgeon, right? Like you've got this
correct
level of, specialization that is just kind of a differentiating factor in and of itself in terms of like your, kind of marketplace. How many other firms are concentrating just solely on DWI cases, or even maybe primarily on DWI cases?
You'd be surprised. And I'll say that you used that word starting with S, specialization. In Washington, we have to say focus area. We're not allowed to use that word. So
same thing here. It's a
right.
You got the bar rules, but yeah, in terms of right.
You're my exclusive focus, right? You'd be surprised. There are actually a number of firms in my area. I'm in a county, the county just north of King County, which is where Seattle is, and so we've got a fairly large metropolitan area. And there's, I'd say, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40 firms and or sole practitioners that are focused on DUI. In terms of exclusive focus, there's fewer, but you're still looking at a good dozen or so in the area. The nice thing, right, is that there's more than enough business to go around. And also, the nice thing is that we all present different things. And more than that, I present something different than everybody else. You talked about my team and my team having all these different sort of pieces to it. And that was a huge game changer for me, was when I started using a team-based concept. When you have multiple attorneys at a firm, the common business practice is intake, client hires, file goes to lead attorney is lead attorney on case, and you just farm them out to the attorneys and you go down the row or whatever. Or the person who brings them in gets to keep them, whatever it is. I don't do that. I refuse to do that. I think that my clients are paying a significant sum of money to go through a tremendous ordeal for themselves, and they deserve the benefit of everything that we have to offer them. And so when I hired my first associate, now my senior associate, Rachel, when I hired her, I hired somebody with 7.5 years rather as a municipal court prosecutor under her belt, prosecuting DUI cases in the municipal courts locally.
Right.
And so she has a different mindset than I do. And she is one of the most detail-oriented issue spotters I've ever seen. And so, when I've got a police report that needs to be reviewed, I give it to Rachel. And then, 7 months ago, I hired Katie. And Katie was the former lead prosecutor for 3 years, and a prosecutor for over 8 years, former lead prosecutor for 3 years in the Snohomish County drug court program, right? And so she's my person who knows more about addiction and substances and healing than anybody else, right? And I'm our storyteller, right? And so what we've got is you've got 3 different people with a set of overlapping skills complementing each other instead of copying each other. People said, how are you going to find somebody who's just like you? I said, I don't want somebody who's just like me. I already have one of me. Right? I need somebody who can do different things. And so what we tell our clients is, and it's the truth, we don't give them our individual email addresses. We give them our team email address that goes to everybody here at the firm, myself included. so that whoever's in the best position to answer their question at that moment gets back to them usually within a few minutes.
That's awesome.
And at any given stage of a case, the one of us that is the right one to have the case in their hands has the case in their hands. We do weekly case staffing meetings where we touch every single file and we talk about every single file. Every active client we have, we talk about them, what's next, who's going to be on that. So that way they get all that benefit. And nobody else is doing it that way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
and so that becomes a huge selling point.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think that a lot of people preach a team concept, and I would say even true in my own firm, kind of preach a team concept, but there's definitely more of a point man strategy in terms of how we approach things. And I really like that idea of kind of everybody being involved. It's been nice for us in terms of the team model to be able to have mock trial days where we're, kind of living each case and any case that's going to trial, being able to bounce that off of kind of the collective, brain capacity of all of the attorneys at the firm. But I like that idea of, you're getting truly the entire team and not just an individual attorney. You're, when you're asking us a question, you're asking the collective brain power of the entire firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a huge selling point. And, I'll tell you, we don't have any competition in our industry because, we do something different. So nobody else is selling our product. Therefore, we don't have any direct competition. We have colleagues. We have people that do similar things.
Right.
But if we had a direct competitor in terms of branding and marketing, et cetera, it would be a specific firm in Seattle. And I'm not going to mention them by name or by ad, but they're the only other firm in the area that has a brand behind them.
Right.
And that brand for them is a 1-800 number.
Right.
And that 1-800 number is very, very well known in this area because they've been advertising it on morning radio on the rock station with the rock jocks for over a decade, right? The thing about it is that their strategy in terms of managing their cases is not as robust. And the training their attorneys go through is not as robust. The education their attorneys have in terms of DUI specific education and experience is not as robust.
Yeah, I think that's really a difference maker right there.
Well, and I ask people when they ask me what's the difference between you and them, I say they've got a cool 800 number. I have a book that's on the shelf of hundreds of lawyers around the country written about doing what you need me to do. Which would you rather have? Right.
Yeah, I think being able to separate yourself with education, one of our core values is having a student mindset and just trying to constantly be upping the game, right? We're never going to become experts in this in terms of like our own mentality. We're always going to be students trying to kind of figure out the better way of presenting these type of cases. In terms of your firm and the way that you deliver differently, you talk about how you've kind of not got any competition. What does that look like in terms of day to day at the office, whether that's in terms of client interactions, in terms of your core values, in terms of where you kind of specifically put your time and energy in terms of training? What are some of those differentiating factors?
Sure. And I'll say that this evolution into who we've become, I'm specifically talking about sort of the DUI Heroes model at this point. But this evolution into this really started years ago. And I want to, I guess, tell you a brief story that sort of leads into where we're going, if that makes sense.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
And this is a story from, gosh, I'm going to say my third or fourth year owning the firm on my own. And at that point, it was just me. I didn't even have a support staff. I mean, it was literally just me running the shop. And I had a client by the name of Catherine. Okay, and Catherine had come to me on a second offense DUI. Her first offense was alcohol-related. Second offense, the facts were pretty lame. She got in a little fender bender getting off the highway in the middle of the afternoon. Officer came and investigated it and said, hey, why don't you guys go pull over there into that parking lot and I'll come talk to you. She was on a number of mental health drugs at the time, very nervous, very anxious. And he noticed that she seemed very jittery and very nervous around him. So rather than call out a drug recognition expert or anything like that, he asked her what sort of medication she was on. And when she listed off her medications, he just arrested her for DUI, took her down to the station, had her blood drawn. She ended up in my office. And, as a lawyer, two little asides from this story. The first thing is there's a project that I'm working on my own that is separate and apart from my law firm. And it's not something I'm going to be doing for profit or as a business or anything. But it deals with the idea of changing the mindset of the community about how defense lawyers work and who we are, and changing the mindset so that people understand that we are not the bad guys, that we're the ones who take our clients' worries and fears and tears and heartache home with us. That those of us that really care about our clients go through it with them, and nobody sees that, right? And so it's about the concept of sharing those stories that have made a difference to us individually as advocates. And then the second aside is, any attorney will tell you this, we are supposed to care equally and like our clients equally, regardless of who they are, how they come to us, how they present themselves. And for the most part, that's true. But every now and then, you get a client you like a little bit more, or you connect with a little bit more, or it's just, oh gosh, I'm so happy to hear. Catherine was one of those clients. She was somebody I loved hearing from her. She called us almost every week. And most cases, there was nothing going on. And part of the reason was because she was very, very anxious, very nervous, and it helped calm her down. Well, her case moves forward along in time, and we set it for a series of pretrial motions the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I go down to the courthouse, and we're the only case on the calendar, and she's not there. It's weird. So I call her, I don't get an answer. And I say to the judge who's there, and this is Judge Carol McCrae, she's now retired. I say, Judge, I got to be honest, this is unusual for her. And I'm going to ask you first not to issue a warrant. She said, no, I know this is unusual for her. I'm the judge who's monitoring her probation on her first case. I've gotten to know her. This is unusual. Have you heard from her? I said, no, I haven't heard from her in about a week and a half or so. And as I started describing not having heard from her and kind of just that it was unusual, I started getting a little pit in my stomach. And I said to the judge, Judge, I got to be honest, I got a really bad feeling about this. I don't have anything else on my calendar today. What I'm going to ask court to do is strike the motion hearing. I think I'm going to call the Everett Police Department, and I'm going to go do a welfare check with them. I want to make sure she's okay. So I take myself up to this house in the middle of a neighborhood in Everett, which is the next town up from Seattle, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I get there, and there's an Everett Police Department officer already there. And he greets me, and he says, so you're here looking for Catherine? I said, yes. And he said, and who are you? And I said, I'm her attorney. He says, okay, well, I ran this address when I got here. We were here a week ago. She's dead. And I said, I'm sorry, what? He said, yeah, she's dead. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know. So I went up to the records department, and I got a copy of the police report that day. And one of her roommates had found her just laying in bed. All of her pills were gone, and she went to sleep and didn't wake back up. And I filed a motion to dismiss because, you got to do that to kind of clean up the procedural nature of it and all that. And I filed all this again on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I just sat in my office staring kind of at the walls. Catherine was not the first client who I had lost in my career, but it was a hard hit. And my phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Judge McCrae. And Judge McCrae said, Jonathan, I just got your motion, and I saw the police report, and I wanted to call and say I'm really sorry. And I said, well, Judge, I appreciate that. I wish I could say this was the first client I've lost, but sometimes as defense attorneys, people come to us in the worst situations of their lives, and it's a situation where you just got to kind of deal with it sometimes. And Judge McRae said to me, and I will never forget this, and I'll be honest, I did not look up the rating of your podcast, and I apologize if I'm about to say something I'm not supposed to. Judge McRae said to me, Jonathan Dichter, don't bullshit me. And I said, I'm sorry, Judge? She said, I've been watching you for about the last 5 years in my courtroom. You care more about your clients than most attorneys can ever hope to learn how to. And this was a really nice lady. How are you really doing? Okay, all right. So I leveled with her and I told her it was a really tough thing. And Judge McRae did not have to go out of her way to make that call in the first place. She sure as heck didn't have to go out of her way to tell me that that's how I was being seen by the legal community. But it altered the course of my practice because I realized that that level of caring wasn't a deficit. It was a strength. It wasn't something I was doing wrong as a lawyer. It was something I was doing right as a lawyer.
I think going to your point of just, being able to kind of change the perception of criminal defense attorneys. And, again, I'm not sure exactly what that looks like in terms of kind of your side project, but having that level of compassion, I think is a lot of the difference making in the public perception is to see attorneys that are not just, everybody imagines that criminal defense lawyers are in it for the money, which is absurd because that's not,
that's personal injury lawyers.
Yeah, doesn't fit or that, people want to, for some reason get in it to undermine the judicial system or whatever it might be. And, the compassion element, I think, is something that sets a lot of criminal defense attorneys apart. I think that's the reason why a lot of people get into it. Now, maybe some people lose their way a little bit in the trying to find out how to make a living, trying to figure out how to kind of make ends meet. And so you kind of lose some of that. But for the most part, there is a lot of compassion within the criminal defense bar. But I also think that in terms of making your individual, market different, and again, not having ever seen you in the courtroom, but having watched, the video, your brand video that is on your website, that is clearly one of the most important pieces of your practice is the client interaction, right? Like not necessarily what happens in the courtroom, but this is a human being that I am representing, and this is
absolutely
that is going through addiction. This is a human being that might die because of this disease that they have.
Yeah, and so this journey began there. And that became something that altered the course of things, and it continued through into last year. And last year, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a marketing conference in Atlanta that I went to. And while I was there, I redesigned my own mission statement, vision statement, and core values. And my mission statement evolved into, I'm going to share it with you.
Yeah, that would be great.
All these things with you here. So this is the mission statement of my firm at this point. DUI Heroes works every day to provide the highest quality, innovative, caring, and unyielding DUI and criminal defense representation to our clients, treating them with compassion and humanity in order to help them through the unrelenting, traumatic stress of being charged with a crime. We help our clients when they cannot help themselves by treating them with the respect and caring we would want if we were in their position. We go a step beyond all other attorneys' offices to create the best possible customer service experience for our clients at all times, regardless of how our days are going or the stressors in our lives outside this office. And after I wrote that, I sat down and I wrote 7 we believe statements. And I remind
before you get into that, I just think that is such a important mindset to have in terms of everything in there. And I know education is important to you, based on all of the CLEs that you've attended on your website, all of the CLEs that you've taught, the fact that you have authored the innovative DUI Trial Tools, but that's not in your mission statement, right? It's all about, kind of recognizing the client as a human being. And one thing that I always think of is the client that gets amazing courtroom representation and gets an amazing result in the courtroom, but has a crappy client attorney experience is going to leave that attorney-client representation disappointed. The client that doesn't get the outcome that they're looking for, but gets incredibly compassionate and caring representation, is going to walk away from that experience and tell every person that they meet, this is the person that you need to go talk to.
One of the kindest reviews that a client left for me on Avo years ago, I read it and I was blown away by the kindness of it and the generosity with the praise that which she heaped on me. She wrote it 2 weeks after I lost her jury trial.
Right.
So, but that's, and that's, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not, some of that stuff is just not within your control. Clients recognize that, but what they do recognize is that what is within your control is 5-star service all the time. The phone calls, the emails, everything that you're doing to kind of help them get the information that they need, to help get the answers to their questions, to help them feel like you understand and care about what happens, that this is such a life-changing event. That all is really what drives the client experience in terms of being able to come away from it feeling not just satisfied, but wowed. Yeah.
And that actually really nicely progressed into those we believe statements. And what I like about these is they summarize what my business is. And I say my business because, much like some other industry leaders I'm familiar with, I remind my people frequently that this is who we are as a business. And if you're not okay with that, that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad employee. It doesn't make you a bad lawyer. It doesn't make you a bad anything. Please tell me that you don't agree, and I will happily help you find your next position.
Right.
I will give you a wonderful reference, and I'll give you 2 months severance. Right? Nobody's taken me up on it yet because everybody buys in. But
I love the fact that you're willing to kind of put your money where your mouth is. I mean, if you've got somebody that is not a culture fit, it really doesn't matter how experienced they are, what they can bring to the courtroom. If they don't fit in with your culture, it's not going to end well.
Well, and with our rebrand, one of the things that we added to it, we used to have a packet for our clients, an opening packet. Welcome to the firm. Here's a list of the things you might need. Here's the different agencies we work with. Some lawyers, they give out the little pamphlets from the different agencies, the little business cards. We went a step beyond that. We put it into a nice packet of paper. Well, now we went a step beyond that even, and now we have a very nice, fully designed, branded, full color, essentially magazine booklet, 8.5 by 11, full color, both sides, bound and printed. And on the back cover are these we believe statements so that every client knows who is representing them. And they are: we believe a DUI charge shouldn't destroy a person's world. We believe a person struggling with substances is someone with a problem, not someone who is a problem. We believe it's our duty to protect our clients' hopes and dreams for the future. We believe that client care, which is what we call it, is far more effective and human than case management. We believe that sharing our clients' stories is the pathway to justice. We believe innovative storytellers are always more effective than any other advocate in any case. And lastly, and this one is larger than the rest, we believe in our clients.
I love that.
And it's of crucial importance to me that our clients carry this with them. They get a branded folder with this client handbook in it. It's not a guide. It's not a defendant's guide. It's not a, whatever. It's a client handbook. It's here's who we are, who you've hired to take your hand and guide you through this process. And here's how we view you, right? And then we talk about what that really means on the business side.
How do you incorporate those belief statements into what you guys do?
Real simple.
Organization.
Client commitment is one of our first core values. Caring client relationships. All of our clients, we refer to them by first name. We allow them to refer to us by first name. You know, clients who call me sir, Mr. Dictor, attorney Dictor. No, thank you. Jonathan is just fine.
I totally agree.
Right? Quality, caring, and representation. Right? We make sure that we just care. One of the easiest ways to do that, we've found, is to recognize one thing that almost nobody tells their clients. This attorney I was talking to a week or so ago asked me, he says, so take me through, like, what's a potential client phone call look like for you? They call, they say, hi, I got a DUI last night. What do you tell them? I said, the first thing I tell them, and everybody at my firm tells them this, and they honestly feel it, honestly believe it, and honestly want the client to know it, is, I'm really sorry that happened. That sucks. That's a terrible thing to go through. I'm sorry you're going through it. Let's see what we can do to help you.
Yeah, I think that
right?
one of the kind of, to piggyback off of that idea, one thing that I have kind of found inconsistent, and we try to, always kind of communicate with clients kind of with a smile in our voice, with a, kind of cheerfulness in our voice. But to some extent, there's certain times when somebody calls in and, they basically, the right approach isn't, how are you doing today? Or, if why they're walking into the office, and then you kind of, act like you don't know why they're there by saying, how's life going? How are you doing today? It is totally a off-putting. It's like you have
Absolutely.
no clue what I just went through. I was in handcuffs last night. I was in the back of a police car. Did you not realize like why I'm on your calendar today? So having your entire team realize, this person is at the, kind of bottom of life, and it doesn't mean you can't help encourage them to kind of move forward in the right direction, but you also have to be there with them for a little bit.
And here's a $1 million piece of advice for any DUI attorneys listening. This will increase your value to yourself and to your clients by $1 million over the course of your life. I guarantee it, or you guys can return the podcast to James at no cost. Okay. So here's what it is, right? And James, based on what you just said, I know for a fact that you were either in the same room as I was, or you were listening to the same talk that I was in October in Atlanta when Chris Voss from the FBI talked about not asking clients how they're doing that day.
Right.
And I agree with that completely, but I've taken that a step further, because the question is, if you're not going to ask them how they're doing, what are you going to ask them? Because it's our natural instinct when somebody calls us on the phone to interact with them on a personal level. So here it is. Stop saying, how are you? And start saying, how can I help you?
I love that.
Right? It's the same greeting. It means the same thing, but one of them is way more respectful of what the client's going through. And that's going back to our core values. That keeps going. Integrity, trust, and honesty is one. I tell my people, we are honest and open with our clients. We are honest and open with opposing counsel. We are honest and open with the courts, with potential clients. We're honest and open with each other, and we're honest and open with ourselves, right? Leadership. We lead by example from the top down. You only got 4 people in the office. If one guy is slacking off, that's a fourth of your entire staff. And if that one guy is me, we got a problem.
Right.
But this is the big one that I think really helps push that emotional component forward. Gratitude. Recognize the fact that when that person who was in handcuffs the night before calls you on the phone, or walks into your office, or sits down with you and says, help me, they're doing one of the hardest things that any human being has to do, which is asking for help from somebody else. How amazing of a gift is that they're trusting you, somebody they've never met before, asking you to help them. And so we practice that every day, and we are absolutely grateful to our clients and to the system for being there to let us do the job. They honor us by allowing us to be there for them.
Yeah, I think that you've put that in such a, I think, wonderful way of how you kind of view clients. And throughout our conversation, I get the sense that, this is, again, not something that is done when the client is present in the office, and then as soon as they leave, you're having your bitching session with, the other attorneys at the office. I think in terms of changing the culture of criminal defense, maybe this is one of the biggest things that we can do as a bar, is to really avoid complaining about our clients. I think we have a tendency to, everybody wants to complain about their work. And, for better or for worse, as a criminal defense lawyer, your work is a human being. Your work is your client.
Yeah.
So we all want to, kind of blow off steam, let one another know, hey, we're kind of dealing with this same thing. But if we can change the way that we talk about our clients behind closed doors, that will shine through when we have, clients sitting in the office, when we're out in the community. Like you said, being open with the court, with the DA, with your client, with your team. When you have the ability to kind of say the same thing, in the kind of behind the scenes area where only attorneys are allowed, as you would say, in front of your client in the courtroom.
Yeah.
We've completely changed the way that the public will perceive us in that step of not complaining about the client.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what we talk about all the time, is the fact that it's not just about how the clients perceive it. It's not just about how the opposing counsel perceives it. We have to perceive it that way too, right? I mean, I don't know if you're picking up on this, right? Number one, I have a background in performance. I am an actor, but I'm not that good of an actor. I really believe this stuff.
Right.
I don't know if it's coming through in my tone or in the way that I'm talking about it, but this stuff means something to me, right? This is what I've dedicated my career to doing. And these are the people I've dedicated my career to. These are people who I've sat in jail on Christmas Eve with crying. These are people who I've sat with their families crying. These are people who I've celebrated their victories. I've had heartbreak at their failures. These are people who I have stood beside, held the hands of while their hands are quivering and shaking. These are people who I have had to teach and coach my associates that it's okay that sometimes the best thing a hero can do is stand with their client until they can't anymore, right? And that's a great example of another sort of emotional impact. This was a rough one for me because it was a new thing for me. And I mean, I've been doing this 16 years. New experiences sometimes are hard to come by. And the new experience I had was I had to guide one of my associates through the loss of one of our clients, the first time ever. And it wasn't just the loss of one of our clients. It was another client like Catherine. Right. It was another client she had worked her way into our heart. She's, one of those clients that was terrified of the process, would hold our hands in court, would hug us whenever she left, would thank us for giving her hope. And this is someone who, unfortunately, very recently during the snowstorm we had here, due to a variety of different circumstances, not the least of which was just some horrific depression leading to some poor choices, found herself wandering in the snowstorm and was found face down 3 days later, just on the side of the road. And we saw a newspaper article about it. It was heartbreaking. And I had to sit there with my associate while my associate was in tears saying, you didn't miss this.
Right.
This isn't something you could have foreseen or protected her from. You allowed her the hope that she had, and maybe this came at a different time than it would have. Maybe this is something where maybe she just didn't feel as alone anymore. Right. And sometimes that's all we can do.
Yeah, sometimes that is. And I think, beyond just kind of what happens in the courtroom, I think that is one of the things that allows you to separate yourself, is recognizing when you look at somebody as a human being, and when you look at them in terms of coming into your office with that kind of humility of, I need help, our level of help doesn't just end in terms of what happens in the courtroom. It is all about, what are we trying to aid the client in terms of redirecting their life, in terms of coming out of the legal situation a better person than when they went into it. And so in terms of just piggybacking off of some things that you've said earlier, I think that one of the things that is most important in terms of kind of that, action plan or detail oriented kind of here's some of the places to contact is really kind of getting a sense of how can I give the client the resources that they need to improve their lives, right? Like this is a real opportunity. There's very few times in life that you get to have like a kind of true moment where everything has crashed. There are very few times where you get to kind of be the first person that somebody talks to, the first person that they open up to about, I have a drinking problem, right? Like I have a drug problem. I have an issue in terms of losing control. That's a difficult thing to tell somebody, and to be that first person to be able to say, here, I've got, I'll do everything that I can to help you, but I also have these other professionals that I can recommend that can be life-changing for you.
Let me give you another one of my big practice tips on this factor. And this is a huge difference compared to many other people who do what we do. And I don't know what your practice is or isn't, but most DUI attorneys and or criminal attorneys have a resource list, right? And it's like, okay, you're here to meet with me, James, about your DUI. And look, one of the things I want you to do is I want you to have an alcohol and drug evaluation. Now, here's a list of 10 local agencies that may be near you. I want you to find one that works with your insurance, and I want you to go have an alcohol and drug evaluation, right? Pretty standard. Sound about right?
Right.
Yeah. Stop doing that, okay? Find the one agency that you want every one of your clients to go to. Contact the owner or the managing clinical director of that agency. Form a relationship with that person. Get them to understand that you are their client, not your clients. You are their client. And then when your client is sitting there, you say, look, you have just paid me a significant sum of money so that I will help you with this, which means I've already done the legwork. Right. I don't want you to look at this list. I want you to call this person. They are waiting for your call already. You tell them you're my client. They have a process specifically for my clients, and they'll walk you through it. In my client handbook, I have one alcohol and drug evaluation treatment agency. I have one insurance agent. I have one interlock provider. That's it. And more than that, on the business side, these agencies that I've been working with, for the most cases, almost the entire time my firm's been open, I met with each one of their either regional directors or my sales reps or whoever. I met with the vendors specifically. I looked at them face to face. I shook their hands and I said to them, look, I'm good at what I do, and I'm going to get better at what I do. And I'm young. I just turned 42 last week, right? I still got 20, 30 more years in me. Right now, I, on average, will refer out for evaluations about 100 to 150 clients a year.
Right.
Now, at $200 an evaluation and $200 for an alcohol and drug information school and a DUI victims panel, at a minimum, right? Figure $400 a client times 100 clients, that's $40,000 a year. Now multiply that by 20 years, okay? That's $8 million.
Right.
Okay? And I tell the person very simply, I will hand you $8 million over the course of the next 20 years on one condition. You understand that the first time one of my clients comes to me with a complaint about you that you don't handle immediately and appropriately, you will lose my business for the rest of my career. And I have held to that because I've done that to one of my agency, my interlock agency, my original one lost me, and I'll never refer another person to them again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
and
I think that's incredibly important because you are providing value to people. One of the agency that we work with here in Asheville, I had a client that came into my office probably about 3 or 4 months ago, had gone through the treatment with them and just was singing their praises, without being required by the court to do additional treatment with them. She was on her own kind of doing follow-up aftercare, after her case and everything is closed. And she just is constantly like, singing their praises, preaching about them. And at one point I was like, they're not here in the room right now, right? Like they're not here. But that's the kind of person that you want to send your client to, is somebody where it's kind of, because they're going to relate that value back to you to some extent. I mean, they're going to,
absolutely.
and if it's a crappy experience at the alcohol assessing agency,
Same thing.
You didn't have any involvement in the treatment. Why did you send me over there? Like, they couldn't get my treatment turned into the DMV. They didn't, they played movies the whole time. I mean, why don't you know more about this? Right. Like, that's a legitimate question.
Yeah. And, when it comes to something like interlocks, which are getting way more ubiquitous in our industry, this is kind of a moving target. A lot of our clients are having struggles with these things because the technology is different for every car. Clients at different demographics, different sort of health conditions, and those things are having trouble with them. I don't tell them, look, this interlock agency is going to be a problem-free experience. I tell them this interlock agency is the one I refer to, because when you run into a problem, you will call me, I will call Zach, and Zach will call you, and your problem will be fixed. Right? Now, hopefully there aren't any problems, and hopefully everything works how it's supposed to, right? But if you're driving a Tesla, right, or you're 82 and you have emphysema, or who knows what, and the interlock goes wonky on you, rather than have to wait a week for it to get fixed and have it beeping and buzzing and embarrassing you and then end up dragged into court for a conditions of release violation or whatever, I get Zach on the phone with them in 10 minutes, and Zach fixes it because Zach's my rep, and Zach knows, look, your company is going to make a boatload of money off me if you just do the one thing I ask you to do, which is treat my clients like gold.
Right.
Because they are. Right.
Right.
I don't see them as money. I see them as humans, but I can let other people see them as money to get them to treat them like humans, because you can't expect everybody to care the way that you do, but you can entice them to do it if you remind them why.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I love the way of kind of communicating that in monetary form over the long term. Again, do it for the right reasons, but if not, here's the, business wise, here's a reason to make sure that you're treating everybody the way that they should be treated. Because if you don't, I'm going to find somebody else to help my clients in the future, and I'm not coming back to you. I mean, you have forever to build up trust, and then one time to breach it, and that's the end of the relationship.
Yeah, and that's I tell them, so you don't get a second chance at this, because I don't get a second chance at this. Right? Because I have one thing, really, when it all boils down, I have one thing, which is my credibility. Right. My credibility with my clients. And the first time I breach that with a client, I will never get it back.
Right.
Because that client just won't trust me.
No, and not only will you not get it back, but that client will legitimately tell a lot of other people about that. It will hurt the reputation of the firm. It's the same thing as you were talking about earlier in terms of having that kind of being an open book with the court, being an open book with the DA. You can spend 10 years building up your reputation, and then that one time you do the sneaky shady thing. That's it. That's what you're known for. Yeah, that's what you're known for.
The thing that I am, in all honesty, proudest of in terms of the content I've created, things like that, it's the only thing that I like enough that I framed it and put it up on the wall in my office. Now I've got a copy of my books there and those sorts of things. But it's an article that was never intended for the eyes of clients. It was an article that I wrote in about 6 hours. I was asked by the publisher. The Washington Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers has a quarterly little pamphlet they put out called Defense. And something happened with one of their articles and it fell through. And I had written something months prior, and the editor sent me an email. Do you have anything you can put together for this? I said, sure, I'll put something together. And I wrote an article about client care called I Will Stand With You. And to me, what I wrote was second nature. It was stuff, when I finished writing it, I said, this is the worst thing ever, because this is all really simple stuff that everybody already knows, and I don't know why the hell I'm even submitting this thing. I got such positive feedback from so many lawyers thanking me for writing it and reminding them of it. I have one of the county public defender's offices nearby contacted me and asked me for my permission to make it a part of their hiring packet as required reading. And the basic premise of it, I can sum the entire article up in one basic premise. And it's just something you got to remember, which is no matter how bad your life is today. The person sitting in front of you in your office is having a worse day than you. Right? I don't care if you're going through a divorce. I don't care if your Paycheck Protection Program loan didn't come through. I don't care if the SBA won't give you a economic impact loan. I don't care any of those things. Right? I don't care if you're going to lose your house, if your wife left you, if the dog left you, whatever. The person who is sitting there had a worse day than you. Right? And if you can just remember that and think about what you would feel like in their position, there's a reason why we have the golden rule in closing arguments. There's a reason why we are never allowed to ask juries to place themselves in the position of our clients, because there is no way to not empathize with them at that point. But there's no rule against us doing it. Right. In fact, I think we're required to do it.
I love that. No, I'm totally stealing that. That's going to be
help yourself.
Yeah, that's going to be definitely a part of the conversation with the team in the morning huddle tomorrow. Is going to be.
I'm happy to send you a copy of the article. Feel free to distribute it.
Yeah, please do. I think that may be a good place for us to stop. Just thinking through that idea of the person sitting across the desk from you is having a worse day, and remembering that and letting that be what sets the tone of your conversation, because compassion just springs out of that. There is no other way to kind of respond to a situation when you can legitimately and truthfully tell your mind that this person that is sitting across from me is in a worse place and needs somebody to help them. That's why they are here. It totally changes the relationship. Complaining now about that person is out the window. I love that mindset. I'm gonna steal that. So, well, I appreciate it, Jonathan, in terms of the conversation. Definitely want to have you back on at some point.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
I would barely scratch the surface. I'd love to kind of get the storytelling model in terms of using that model within particularly a jury trial setting. So definitely would like to talk through that, but really appreciate you being on the show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's my pleasure to do it and to offer what limited perspective I have. I mean, we're all learning this as we go. I've got 16 years of learning behind me, and I've got 20 some years of learning ahead of me. And if it wasn't for other people teaching me things for me to steal, I wouldn't have half the stuff I have. In fact, in the forward, or the acknowledgments rather, of Innovative DUI Trial Tools, when I had to write the acknowledgments, I think there's just a list of people, and I said, I have shamelessly stolen from each and every one of these people. I'm pretty sure they shamelessly stole from others, and you're going to shamelessly steal from me. So by all means,
that's the mentality of a student mindset, right? I mean, the other people have figured this out.
Yeah. Just take what other people have done and do something new with it.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode of the podcast. If you did, please share the podcast with another freedom fighter in the criminal defense community, and be sure to leave us a rating on iTunes. See you next time.